All right, guys, we're going to dive right into it, man. Donald Trump apparently releasing the JFK files today. A lot of information was redacted. A lot of these documents were released back in 92. The American public, 90% of them aren't actually going to read any of these documents. The people speaking out, no one generally cares. Anything to do with Israel was erased and shadow banned on any of those documents, guys. Anything implicating them in any role. Now he had a phone call with Putin, right, to try to end the mess in Ukraine and Russia, what's been going on for the past 4 years. And realistically, it's, there could be some type of agreement reached there. Probably not in the Middle East, right? But Europe, possible agreement reached there. But Trump has ulterior motives. I think Trump and the people around him want to totally abandon Ukraine and work with Russia. Get this. They want to try to get Russia to turn against China, right? He's trying to play that game. And let's get into this interview here where he kind of hints at that.
Pointing at each other, and a ceasefire without going a little bit further would have been tough. Russia has the advantage, as you know. They have encircled about 2,500 soldiers. They are nicely encircled, and that's not good. And we want to get it over with. Look, we're doing this. There are no Americans involved. There could be if you end up in World War III over this, which is so ridiculous. But, strange things happen. And I think we had a great call. It lasted almost 2 hours. Talked about a lot of things and toward getting it to peace. And we talked about other things also.
Was there non-negotiables mentioned by Putin? It was reported that I think the Kremlin media actually stated that he demanded an immediate cessation of aid to Ukraine in order to get to this multi-step deal.
No, he didn't. We didn't talk about aid, actually. We didn't talk about aid at all. We talked about a lot of things, but aid was never discussed.
In the readout, it also stated that both sides want to get to an improved bilateral relationship, the United States and Russia.
That's true.
How can we trust that Vladimir Putin actually wants that, and that he's not also being influenced at the same time by his close friend, President Xi of China?
Well, look, we have our own discussions with President Xi of China, and he wants to get along also, and he's looking to get along, and we're looking to get along with him, and we will. We have a problem of trade where we have a very big imbalance with China. With Russia, we don't have that much trade, and they'd like to, and we'd like to also. They have some very valuable things for us, including very big forms of rare earth. They have a lot of earth. They have a big chunk of real estate, the biggest in the world for a country by far. And on that, they have things that we could use, frankly, and that other people could use. I think that President Xi would like to get along, and I think Russia wants to get along with the United States. I also think we're a much different country than we were just a few months ago. We're a country that's now respected. We were not respected. We were being laughed at. We had incompetent leadership. This was a war, as an example, that would have never happened if I were president.
Is part of your desire to forge this new relationship with Russia also impacted by Russia's closer relationship since you left office in 2021 with China? Because I think you talked about before the desire to box out China from that part of the world and have a closer relationship with Russia.
So as a student of history, which I am, and I've watched it all, the first thing you learn is you don't want Russia and China to get together. With that being said, no, it's not a big part of it, but maybe that'll happen or maybe it won't. Obama really forced them together through energy and bad energy policies. And what he did, so many different things. He forced a marriage which would never have taken place. It was not a natural. And for one reason, Russia has tremendous land, a lot of land, and China doesn't have enough land. Russia has a much smaller population than China. And it's sort of it was always a natural enemy situation. They're probably friendly now, but we're going to be friendly with both. I think we're going to be friendly with both. China needs us in terms of trade very badly, but we have to straighten out the deficit. We have now more than $1 trillion deficit with China. It's not even believable. And we're going to be doing something about that. And with Russia, they would like to have some of our economic power.
The criticism that you've heard since really 2015 is that you have more in common with Vladimir Putin than you do with globalist leaders, maybe some NATO leaders, and in this case, with Zelensky. You're both nationalists. Zelensky's more of a globalist. How do you respond to that criticism?
Well, I am a nationalist, but I'm a nationalist for the United States, not for anybody else. And it's interesting because there's nobody been tougher on Russia than me. I'm the one that pointed out Nord Stream 2, and I stopped it. Nord Stream's the biggest pipeline, I guess, in the world, taking care of all of Europe. And it was being built from before I got there. And they were on the way. It was going to be, and I stopped it. It was just stone cold dead. I stopped it in its tracks. That's not somebody that's being particularly, it was the biggest project they ever had. I had it stopped. When Biden got in, he immediately approved it, like immediately. One of the first things he did in office was he approved Nord Stream 2. Nobody ever heard of Nord Stream 2 until I was president. I said, what are you doing? You mean you're building a pipeline to Germany and various places in Europe. You're paying them billions of dollars a month, and then we're paying a lot of money to fight them. This is not going to work out well. And it stopped, and then Biden approved it, which was a really stupid thing to do, but he did it. And Putin actually said to me, if you're my friend, I'd hate to see you as my enemy. He said that very strongly. But with all of that, I had a very good relationship with Putin. I had a very good relationship with President Xi, a very good relationship with Kim Jong-un of North Korea. Lots of good relationships. And that's a positive thing. That's not a negative thing. But at the same time, I'm about our country. So that's why we're talking about tariffs. We'll be taking in trillions of dollars.
Yeah, man. So, look, China is a much bigger threat than Russia will ever be to America, and I think the neocons and the politicians in the Pentagon, they understand that, and there's been, serious talk about escalating with China because they literally have America by the balls. Let's just be all the way frank here. I mean, you saw what they did with Nvidia like 4 weeks ago. The way they have trade set up, it's completely more beneficial for China in the long run, and they're really outpacing America in AI, technology, you name it, right? Now, I think personally, Trump's strategy is he wants to cozy up to Putin and not have him rely on China so much because it's sort of inevitable. Like, there's no stopping China's growth, right? You literally, like, the only solution is obviously a World War III, which would possibly be the end of humanity as we know it, So, I mean, like, I think what Trump's doing in Europe, he's essentially stopping total nuclear annihilation of half the world, right? Like, because if he goes nuclear, you're talking about, literally genociding the entire world. Like the Middle East is obviously going to be a tragedy, but the Europe situation is like doomsday, right? Especially if nuclear bombs are used in Europe. But check this out, man. So they recently did an interview. Mario Nawfal did an interview with Lavrov. And Lavrov, he asked him about the China situation. And Lavrov's like, the Americans know that we will never betray China, right? he says that any attempts, they reject any and every attempt to try and split Russia from China and their big old alliance there, because that's a dangerous alliance if you think about it, for the U.S. and for the entire world. Because the ball's in their court. It's not. There's no stopping that. Two superpowers, one in the Middle East, Iran, a military superpower, not necessarily economical, but that's a dangerous alliance. That's where we were heading with Joe Biden, right? And these globalists. So let's get right into this clip here, man, of Lavrov saying that Russia would never betray China. Regardless of what the United States offers them. All right. And anyone thinks that the U.S. is looking for, they're trying to sign a mineral deal with Ukraine and Russia, and then we're in need of all these earth minerals. We don't need no fucking earth minerals, man. Trump's just trying to develop an economical relationship with Russia to sort of ease the tension off of them, because they're heavily sanctioned, isolated economically, globally. And Russia has resorted to just dealing with, obviously, certain countries that they're allied with that keep them sufficient, and they even, they don't import anything. Like, they have their own products that they make and create for themselves. They have their own isolated economy that's actually working for them, right? Ever since this war started. Let's get into what Lavrov had to say, though.
Americans know that we would not betray our commitments, legal commitments, but also, the political commitments which we develop with the Chinese. I don't know. I think the answer is, let each nation choose its destiny, its future. It will be exactly in line with the United Nations Charter, which says sovereign equality of states, no interference. Trump is already saying about a meeting at 3, US, China, Russia. He mentioned that he would like to discuss nuclear weapons and security issues. We would be open to any format which is based on mutual respect, on equality, no prejudged solutions. If our Chinese friends would be interested, it would be their decision. But this does not negate the importance of Russia-US dialogue on strategic stability, and the interest in resuming such discussions was expressed repeatedly by Trump and his people. Trump's position, as I said at the very beginning, is that whatever differences we have, don't allow them to generate into a war, and whatever interests come the same way, don't waste the chance to develop this into some practical and useful.
So in the horizon, do you think, and I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but do you think there's a possibility of in the next, let's say, 10 years, of not only normalization of relations between Russia and the US, but back to an alliance between the two countries in the next 10 years? That's something already people are talking about.
The alliance means, at least historically, and this is deeply in our mentality, means that you are ally against somebody. Multipolarity, which Marco Rubio recognized, is different. How can you recognize multipolarity without recognizing such giant as China, such giant as India, Africa as a continent, and Latin America, Brazil, and quite a number of others. Multipolarity, in my view, would be evolving for quite some time. It's historic epoch, probably. And it would, that's my vision. It could be composed of superpowers by the size, by the economic weight, by the military might, especially nuclear, and certainly US, China, Russia fit into this category. Those who are not as big, they can participate in a multipolar world through their sub-regional structures. ASEAN, for example, GCC, Gulf Cooperation Council, League of Arab States. And African Union, by the way, received the status of full member of G20 last year. League of Arab States wants the same. We are in favor. G20, by the way, is the format which is now proving to be not only financially and economically useful, but also politically. It might play a very positive role in the process of multipolarity. Yes, there are still remnants of animosity, but the rule of consensus is there. They don't vote, therefore they are more promising than the United Nations General Assembly, who every now and then, whenever somebody cannot get something from the Security Council, they go to the General Assembly and they stage a show with votes, with accusations, and so on and so forth. But not only Marco Rubio spoke about multipolarity, Donald Trump spoke about NATO, as I referred to his statements, repeated statements, that this was one of the reasons. And
Yeah. So I mean, he made a couple interesting points there. So obviously, the multipolarity, right? The distribution of power, which more than two states could have similar amounts of power, right? So he didn't want to use the word ally or alliance because, just be real, the United States has not played very nice with Russia for a really long time. I mean, even though administrations shift and you might get a president who's a little bit easier on Russia, like Trump, and in the next 4 years, you're going to see a totally different face. You might see another Joe Biden term where they're really not willing to cooperate or talk to Russia. And these people are still exist in America. It's not like Trump got rid of all of these people. Like they still exist. They have a lot of power. They have a lot of influence behind them. I mean, just go turn on your mainstream media. Turn on NBC and you see that these people have a huge backing. It's not to say that 2028 you might get a Gavin Newsom or somebody who people say are have socialist like views, and they're more allied, or they favor like the whole NATO alliance and the EU, and they want to keep the same process going that's been going on for the past 20-30 years, the same bullshit, and it's sucking our economy dry, sucking our resources dry, and it's a lot of policies that don't make sense, immigration policies, etc. So Russia knows that. They know that, okay, with Trump, they might have a little bit of stability, and then all of a sudden after that, after his term's over, it turns back into chaos. So it's not like they're not really putting their full trust into the West anymore, and they know like the West is a decaying superpower. It's a decaying society that has lost its values. Or they claim they're Christian. They have Christian values, Judeo-Christian values, and that's completely trashed in the West. For the majority of it, it's not even respected anymore. And they know that it's a land of degeneracy and chaos, right? And they know that these degenerates still have a lot of power, guys. I mean, they still have influence, and as much as Trump might seem like he's a superhero, he's still very limited on what he could do. I mean, obviously, we just saw the JFK files. The Epstein files haven't been released. The JFK files hasn't been released. He said he didn't want war with Iran and the Middle East, and he's sending 3 warships to Iran. He's constantly striking Yemen. He restarted the genocide in Gaza. I mean, and if it was up to him, I don't think Trump, he never campaigned on going back to war. And a war with Iran is like, it's going to be even worse than like Afghanistan, because Iran's a well-equipped, well-functional, militant, sophisticated military ability, and also the ability to strike anywhere, especially at pro-U.S. assets in the region. That's going to cost, that's billions down the drain. That's, so he's strong in certain areas and he's very weak in certain areas, and he's trying to isolate Ukraine and Zelensky, and he doesn't want to treat Netanyahu with the same energy. He doesn't want to give Netanyahu the same energy because he knows what comes with that. He knows that these people have a lot of control over what happens with foreign policy in the U.S. They control a lot of the politicians, and so he knows not to gamble with that, because that could be essentially gambling with his, just keep it all the way real, man, his life, really. You know what I mean? So he's being tough on NATO and the EU, but he needs to get tough on them too. Because they're not going to benefit America in any way. So he's playing with fire now, right? And NATO's not no joke. There's a lot of NATO terrorist guys out there that have a lot of power and money, like the Soros Foundation, all these people in Europe, Stoltenberg and all these people, man, they have a lot of influence, guys, right? They have a lot of connections. They have people that work for them, intelligence agencies. They do certain things. I mean, they're involved in a lot of criminal activity. So these people aren't, it's not like they're just gonna sit there and allow Trump to, rain hell on them. Like, you never know what they have planned, guys. You know what I mean? So, yeah, Russia will never trust the United States. It's gonna take another, like, I mean, I don't even know if it's even possible, really. I mean, Russia's just they're checked out. They just kind of want to be left alone, and they don't want fucking bioweapons and Ukraine breathing down their neck, and all these other countries that they're allowing to be armed. So, yeah, who knows what's in store, man, honestly.